Hey yo, what is up guys? Mr. Thunderray here, and today we're just going to take a quick look at Sea Battle on Game Pigeon and seeing the best strategy in my opinion. So obviously the strategy isn't going to be something that you can do over and over and over again because it's pretty obvious once you get a hold of it and once your friends catch on to what you're doing. But for the most part, even if they do catch on, I really do feel like it will be difficult for them to beat it, and it will definitely piss them off. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it here. We're going to be talking about probability density functions. We're going to be talking about expected values and a lot of math with really bad handwriting. So if you guys want to skip all that boring stuff and just get into the strategy itself and watch the gameplay, just go ahead and check the description. I'm going to drop a timestamp in there, but the strategy is pretty simple. We're basically just going to be putting all of our ships at the top and the bottom, and I'll go ahead and explain why I think that's the best throughout this video. But again, if you just want to skip to the end and seeing how it works out, go ahead and check the description for a timestamp. We're going to begin by taking a look at a probability density function of a normal battleship game. So if we take a look at the board here, we're going to start off by setting up a 3-wide piece, and the area that it's sitting on is going to get shaded, and it's going to get darker for the number of times that it's been sat on that piece or on that spot. So as we move down here, we're going to see that the first columns 1 through 3 are fully shaded, and then as we move over one column, you're going to see that columns 2 through 3 are going to be shaded darker, and column 4 is going to be shaded the original color. So essentially what we're doing is we're darkening every column every single time part of the ship is sitting on it. So as you can see, as we move all the ships down, it gets darker and darker and darker. And essentially what we begin to look at here is something that looks like this. This is going to be your normal probability density function of your traditional battleship game. So basically what this is saying is if you were to pick one spot beginning your battleship game, this is assuming that no ships have been hit yet, that the location with the highest probability of a ship there is going to be E5, E6, F5, and F6, and the least probable are going to be A1, A10, J1, and J10. With that being said, what we're going to do is we're actually going to place all of our ships, except for our tiny 1x1 ships, all in this area right here, the A column, or the A row, and then down here in the J row. And of course that is going to leave our B and I rows unavailable because in the Game Pigeon version of Battleship you cannot place ships next to each other. So this is going to eliminate the I column and the B column, but that's okay because we're going to have this whole section here, C through H, which is essentially where the main bulk of our strategy is going to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to place our 4 1x1 ships into this area. And basically what this is doing is it's making it nearly impossible to have any sort of strategy to actually hit these 1x1 pieces. Normally in Battlefield, you can strategize a little bit with the checkerboard pattern and all that. You can say, hey, I'm missing a 4 long ship. There's only so many spaces where there are 4 pieces in a row that are missing. Here, you can't really strategize with a 1x1 piece, so we can really use that to our advantage. From here, however, it does get a little tricky. So we're going to start doing a little bit of math. So as we know, like I mentioned earlier, is in the Game Pigeon version, you can't place any ships next to each other. So we can't necessarily say that there's a 4 out of 60 chance that you're going to hit one of our ships. Because if we were to hit one ship, then suddenly that takes out 9 spaces instead of just 1, like you would in a normal battleship. So what we have to do is we have to do a little bit of math and kind of figure out the expected value of, the expected number of turns that it's going to take to actually hit the ship. So I'm not going to get into the math here. You guys can look it up. Just look up, expected value. But basically the equation that we're going to use is just going to be k plus 1 over n plus 1. K being the total number of outcomes and n being the number of desired outcomes. So in this case, for example, the number of turns that we expect to take to hit one of these ships given 60 spaces. If there was just one ship there, we would do 60 plus 1 over 4 plus 1, which is 61 over 5, which is equal to 12.2. So basically this is saying it would take about 12.2 turns to hit one of these 4 ships, just once. So we're actually going to break this down a little bit more and do these ships individually. So we're going to start with this top left one, and we're going to say out of these 9 spaces, how many turns would it take to hit the ship once? So out of these 9 spaces, we're going to do 9 plus 1 over 1 plus 1, which is going to be 10 over 2, which is going to give us 5. So if we were given these 9 spaces, it would take about 5 turns to hit that one ship. So from here, we're going to continue, and we're going to move on from that, and we're going to go on to the one next to it, and we're going to say, if this is the second ship we're doing, then we're going to have still all 9 squares here, and we're going to say, 9 plus 1 over 1 plus 1, which is going to be the same thing. It's going to be 5. Now, the one below that's going to be a little bit different because instead of 9 spaces, we actually only have 7 spaces, given that the second one was hit already. So we really have 7 spaces here, one possible outcome. So we're going to do 7 plus 1 over 1 plus 1, which is going to be 8 over 2, which is going to be 4. And now we're going to finish here with this last one on the bottom, which is going to be 6 total spaces, 1 desired outcome. So we're going to do 7 over 2, which is going to be 3.5, meaning if we were given these 6 spaces, there would be 3.5 turns it would take to actually hit it. So moving on from here is when we start using a little bit more math. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, again, like I mentioned earlier, that there are 60 total spaces plus 1 over 4 plus 1 because there are 4 ships sitting there. So we're going to get 61 over 5, and we're going to get 12.2 to get the first ship in the top left. Moving on from here, we have to figure out how many remaining spaces there are. So we know that we know that we took about 12.2 turns. We took up 12.2 of those spaces. However, because we have 9 squares taken up now, we need to account for those other 4 because we took out 5 of them because the expected value was 5 in that top left one, which means that there's 4 unaccounted for. So we subtract those, and there should be about 43.8 squares remaining by the time that we hit that first ship. So moving on from there, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say 43.8 plus 1 over 3 plus 1, because there's only 3 ships remaining, is going to give us 44.8 over 4, which is equal to 11.2. We're going to follow that up and do the 43.8 minus 11.2 minus 4, because the remaining number from the expected value was 4. 9 minus 4, or 9 minus 5 is equal to 4. And then we're going to get 28.6 squares remaining after we hit that second ship. We're going to continue this process, and we're going to find after we hit that third ship, the one right underneath the second ship, we're going to get 9.87 additional turns, and then we're going to finish with the last ship, which is going to take 8.365 turns. Then we just need to sum up the turns from each individual ship, and we'll find that 12.2 plus 11.2 plus 9.87 plus 8.365 is equal to 41.635. So in other words, it'll take about 41.6 turns to hit all 4 of those ships, given 60 spaces, and every single time you hit a ship, the area surrounding it, the 8 squares surrounding it, are also filled in. This is assuming we're doing the order top left, top right, middle right, bottom, and it does vary a little bit. For example, if we instead did the top left ship, then the bottom ship, then the top right ship, and then the far right ship, we would actually get a total number of turns at 42.135 instead of the total number of turns 41.635, which we got with the initial assumption. So because it's too complicated to not account for order, we're just going to go ahead and round down. That way it's more generous towards the counter argument. So in other words, instead of taking 41 turns, we're just going to round it down to 40 turns. So what we're getting at here is we expect it to take 40 turns on average to hit all 4 of these ships within this 60 ship space. So basically what we're getting at here is even if we were to start the game with all of our ships in the A row and all of our ships in the J row completely wiped out in the first turn, we still expect 40 turns for the opponent to take out the rest of our ships. Obviously, it's kind of misleading because someone could easily get the first ship on the first try, and then suddenly we're down to a space of about 50 spaces instead of 60, which is going to increase their odds significantly. But on average, it should take them about 40 turns. Now, the reason this strategy, I think, works really well is because no game is going to last 40 turns. So if we are going to jump into a game here, we can see that we can take our time and we can actually use normal battleship strategies to take out their bigger ships, and by the end of the game, we should have most of the board taken out and be able to identify where those last single ships are, or at least guess where they are, because there's not that many spaces to guess from. So overcomplicated, horrible handwriting, misleading math aside, also don't judge me if that math is just atrociously incorrect. The point still stands. The method still stands. That if we line up all of our ships at A, all of our ships at J, the odds of them hitting the 4 1x1 ships are extremely low because they can't use traditional battleship strategies. They can't assume that the ship that they're missing is 3 wide, which means it can't fit in this area. They can't checkerboard it. They can't do anything strategically to take out these 1x1 ships. All they can do is guess and check, guess and check. So with 60 spaces, that's going to take them a while. So obviously you can't do the strategy over and over again because your opponent's going to catch on that you're always lining up your ships, and they're going to be able to wipe out most of your ships in the very beginning and start guessing immediately. But even when they do that, as you can see in this last clip here, I'm still able to beat him because he has too many ships, too many spaces, and not enough time, because I've already eliminated so many spaces because I've taken out his ships, his longer ships. Now, obviously, most of these clips aren't actually Sea Battle on Game Pigeon. They're actually Battleship Online, but they have the same ship dimensions, and I figured these would be more competitive players to try the strategy out on, and as you can see, it's working for the most part, which I'm actually really confident about. I really feel like this is a good strategy, especially if you're just messing around playing with your friends, because it is going to be very, very, very challenging for them to pick up on this, or even if they do understand, it's impossible for them to have any strategy against it. They just have to guess and hope that they hit your 1x1 ships. So that's pretty much all of it. At the end of this game here, you're going to see that they're going to have 15 spots open for my last ship, and I'm only going to have 9. So statistically speaking, I have the advantage here. Here's that screenshot I was just talking about. But yeah, so I hope you guys did enjoy this little video. I hope you guys try it out. It's actually really fun. It's fun to troll your friends with it, and it's also really frustrating when people do it to you. But yeah, so I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Mr. Thunderay, signing out. Peace.